Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe. Went into urgent care to get some neck pain with pressure looked at, thinking it was probably a strain or sprain or something else innocuous. I'd been battling a nasty virus for a couple of weeks, lots of coughing, but it just felt weird, so better safe than sorry. Doctor ordered a CT on a gut feeling, and it was a vertebral artery dissection. Basically, the concern was that thing was gonna cause a stroke if I hadn't been caught, so I spent the next few weeks worrying about dying 24/7. Then, a few months later, I got another one. And now the concern is that I'm just susceptible to them. The scariest part of it is worrying that I, a single mom, might just have a stroke and die suddenly while I'm home alone with my 4-year-old. I was sleeping over at my grandmother's house when I was about 10 years old. Just me and her. She started having a seizure in the middle of the night. I woke up to the bed shaking and her choking on her dentures. I had no idea what was happening. Screamed, ran out to get the phone and called 911. When she came to, she didn't know who I was. Turns out, she had a golf ball-sized tumor in her brain. She had surgery and lived about 8 more years before mesothelioma got her. Went night walking when I was 15. Had an old obese man in a large orange car circling the block. I was so freaked out that I ran into the adult bookstore. The worker told me to get out, but after I told him that some dude is trying to take me, he was understanding. The worker walked outside, and the guy was sitting in the parking lot waiting for me to come out. Once he saw the worker, he sped off. I had pulled into a church where my son had a soccer game. When you pulled in, the church was on the left and the cars were parked in the grass on the right. The lane going in was pretty narrow, and there was a dump truck in front of me and a row of cars behind me. All of a sudden, the dump truck just started reversing right onto my minivan, crushing the hood. It just kept going, and I couldn't go anywhere. I was shaking so bad I couldn't seem to unbuckle myself, and I just kept screaming. I was really aware I needed to get out at the front and get my son out, but I was failing. I think some people standing around started screaming at the guy because he stopped just before the window. It was absolutely insane. It turned out the guy had borrowed the truck from his brother-in-law and wasn't even licensed to drive it. I know this because he just kept blurting it out. It explained why he was smashing cars up as a kid's soccer game. That was maybe 10 years ago, and I still stay about 20 feet away from trucks. I always figured I'd be more fight or flight, but turns out I'm freeze and scream. Terrifying. Got caught up in a piece of machinery in a refinery. Was pulling me up through the 2-chain conveyors, which would have cut me into 3 bits, while simultaneously crushing my head down into my shoulders. Head was bent nearly fully sideways, and my thighs were just starting to touch the underneath of the chains when a mate heard me scream and pushed the down button. It dropped down, and I fell out. My wife, 32 years old, going into septic shock unexpectedly just a few months ago. Thought it was norovirus for just a day before she went septic. It was insanely fast, and we're both incredibly traumatized from the whole experience now. Thankfully, she pulled through with minimal long-term side effects. Doctors don't know what the infection was from, which is somehow even more scary. Walked into my local CVS after dark in December of 2 years ago, but not nearly late enough for them to be closed. All the lights were on, Christmas music playing, not a damn soul in sight. No customers, no staff, nothing. I walked the whole store over and found no one. I leave, drive over to the next CVS that's about 10 minutes away, same exact thing. Lights on, music playing, no one home. It's the only time I've ever felt anything close to that sense of back rooms. Oh, and in both stores, Barbra Streisand's good but chaotically disorientingly Jingle Bells was playing. I fell through the ice on Lake Erie when I was 15. My girlfriend was watching me climb around on the ice. I took one step too far. By the time I realized I was going in, I was in. I was wearing a one-piece snowmobile suit and snowmobile boots. My feet hit bottom, so I pushed off thinking I'll go back through the hole I fell through. Wrong. I hit my head on the ice hard enough to see stars. When I got it together, I had to swim back to the hole against a current. I still had on the snowmobile gear, so I was struggling. Obviously, I made it, but just barely. I was starting to black out when I was able to grab the edge of the hole I fell through by my fingertips. I pulled myself out and got back to my girlfriend as quick as possible. We went back to her house and got me dried out and warmed up. The one time I went skydiving, which you have to be attached with an instructor, after I pulled the cord for the chute, it got tangled and the instructor goes, "Oh shit," and was grunting as he was reaching up trying to untangle the cords, which were spinning round and round. He finally got it sorted, and we descended normally. After we landed, I go, "What happened up there?" And he tells me I was about to cut the cord and deploy the backup chute. I asked him how many times he'd ever had to do that, and he said, 7. Almost got caught in a forest fire while hiking once. That was pretty scary. We were at the halfway point of a loop and noticed the sun looking orange. By the time we booked it back to the trailhead, there was ash raining from the sky. The air was smoky, and light was dark orange-red. We were joking that maybe one does simply walk into Mordor after all. But after the fact, as we saw the rangers closing every road behind us, we drove away. The realization of just how lucky we got sank in. Also, waking up from a deep sleep to the sound of my elderly dog tumbling down some stairs and screaming, ugh. I thought for sure she had broken her back and would have been euthanized. Turns out she had dislocated her hip, and it was able to be reduced. We were given 50-50 odds that it would stick, but it did. We had 3 more years with her, for which I'm very grateful, but man, the sound of those screams will haunt me forever. Hey guys, just a little shout out today to you all for letting us know about the audio issue we had yesterday. We're a day ahead of production, so I'm seeing this now, but we have another video in the shoot for today, so I apologize for the little bit of audio feedback and then the error toward the end of the video. We'll correct that and ensure it doesn't happen again. Also, House of Pain, I did read your long message. I don't take feedback I don't get angry about it. I appreciate it, so thank you. And again, we work hard every day to make the channel a bit better, and we'll continue to do so. So thanks for your support. See you soon. My wife was out with friends, and I got woken up by a call at around 2 a.m. from her screaming and crying because 2 men had grabbed her and tried to force her into a doorway. She'd managed to fight them off and run down the street and called me in the process. I ran out of the house in my bed t-shirt, no trousers, socks, or shoes, and jumped straight in my car, drove through every red light, and got to her in about 7 minutes and found her being confronted by a group of other girls in a bus stop. What should have been a standard cold turned to fluid in my lungs due to heart failure. I'd had a rough week of coughing and wheezing, laid down to get flat, and immediately couldn't breathe. Got back up, but I was still gasping for air. I've been in some situations, but there was always something I could do, fight back, try something. All I could do here was try and calm down to breathe as much as I can. Ended up at the hospital at about 3 a.m., and I'm on new meds, which suck, but seem to be holding it at bay. The annoying thing is, I really don't want to be here, but not being able to breathe was physically terrifying. That is not how I want to go. I was 13 years old when my niece's piece of shit scumbag deadbeat father tried breaking into our house when it was just me, my 16-year-old sister, and her daughter, who was less than a year old at that point. Well, it was kind of like that famous scene in When a Stranger Calls. We got a phone call from my neighbor, who told us that there was a man who was sneaking around our house looking into our windows. They saw him cut through our neighbor's front yard right into my backyard, which is big and unlit. My sister comes rushing into the room, killed all the lights and TVs in the house, and we hid behind my bed. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared shitless. I cried. He might have been trying to scare us, I don't know. All he did was bang on our windows. He climbed up our deck and started knocking our sliding door hard. It did sound like he was trying to break in. My neighbors had already called the cops. In one of the scariest moments of my life, I will say it was pretty badass to watch the police quietly roll down our street, park halfway down, and rush to our house on foot. They got him in like 5 seconds, LMAO. The guy's a real piece of shit. I spent my youth doing outdoor action sports, climbing, whatever, kayaking, mountain biking, and etc. Had quite a few accidents, a couple climbing, a near-death experience, kayaking, and several serious mountain bike accidents. The one that almost got me was a bicycle crash right up the street from my house when I was testing out a newly repaired bike by riding it up and down the block without a helmet. Not sure what happened because my memory blanked out the accident, but I went over my handlebars into the street, landing on my head. I was unconscious for a while and woke up to a motorist holding a cloth to my head to stop the bleeding. I fractured my skull in 2 places and broke my neck where it attached to the skull. It was a horror show, as I've always been phobic about head injuries. I did survive with a nice new scar above my eyebrow where it landed and cracked my skull, and I got a 1.5 inch shorter instantly from compressing my neck cartilage. That cartilage is now degenerating, and my neck is pretty much constantly in pain. I hit my head in middle school playing Capture the Flag. It bounced off the floor, and I just remember seeing the black figures of people around me, and in like a cutscene, I woke up in a chair suddenly. Don't remember getting up, just scooting back and following a voice saying, "Come here," completely clueless that I got knocked out. They didn't send me directly to the nurse, so I was in my next class and suddenly started crying from brutal head pain. They finally sent me to the nurse, where I proceeded to have a seizure and forget how to walk for 5 minutes. My dad picked me up and got me McDonald's. I opened the back door at work to throw out garbage. I had a cop pointing a gun at me, point blank. He shook and screamed, "Get back inside now." Well, no other explanation or anything. So I called the police and asked what the hell was going on, and told him I had a gun pointed at me. It ended up that someone had committed an armed robbery nearby, and he was seen running into our lot. I heard nothing more until 2 weeks later, when a customer came into the store asking, "Are you okay? I saw what happened to you." Ends up, she was in her car and saw the man jump our fence and crawl into an opening in the building next door. She saw the police and hid in her car instead of telling them where the man was. Not gonna lie, my first instinct was pure anger at what had just happened, but an hour later, I was a total wreck because I realized how close I had been to being shot point blank by a stupid cop. We had a camera installed immediately after that day, so we could see what and who was outside before we opened the door. Once I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard someone walking in my hallway, slow, steady footsteps. I froze and listened again, thinking maybe I imagined it. Then I heard the floorboards creak a second time, closer to my door. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped out, only to find the hallway completely empty. Nothing. Total silence. The next morning, I realized the sound came from the neighbor's renovation work. But in that moment, at 3 a.m., it felt like I was living inside a horror movie. Back in my 20s, I worked in a bar and closing time was 4 a.m. I was giving a coworker a ride home, and she asked me to stop so she could get cigs. I pulled up to the gas station in downtown Atlanta, and she got out, leaving the passenger door unlocked. I was listening to music, decompressing after a long night, when the door opened and some random slid in the passenger seat, put his arm around me, and tried to kiss me. I freaked out, screaming, laying on the horn, beating on him. I was legit terrified, thinking I was being abducted. Turned out it was a Georgia Tech student. He fled from my car. Then he and his stupid friends taunted me from a safe distance on the edge of the parking lot. I was on my way home from New York City to upstate New York. I was 19 years old at the time. A middle-aged Russian man was in one of those white pedo vans, and he was tailing me on the Taconic Parkway. He followed me for 45 minutes, honking at me to lower my window, trying to slam into me, smiling and winking. I had to get off at my exit. I tried calling my dad, my brother, but no one was answering. So I pulled into the local police station, and naturally there were no police outside at this moment. And while trying to call the police and staying in my car, he opened my door, which I thought I had locked, and leaned in to kiss me. When I denied him and told him to leave, he said, "Why not? You flirted all that time." And then rolled his eyes, got in his car, and drove away. Like, what? A policeman came out after 15 minutes because I was frozen and could never finish the phone call. I told him what happened, and they tried to find him, but nothing happened after that. I was genuinely terrified, but he told me I did the right thing by coming to the police station and not going home. It's not their fault no one was outside. It was early in the morning. I never finished the phone call, and the town I was living in at the time was minuscule. It never occurred to me to call 911 while I was driving because I was so focused on trying to ditch this guy and being petrified that it never even crossed my mind. I hope he's never assaulted anyone, but they spent the better part of an hour searching for him and even contacted Highway Patrol, but no one could find him. It was crazy. The audacity to even assault me in the police parking lot. This is one of those things I've been most traumatized by for the longest. There are many extremely scary things that have happened to me, though. I was 10 and had been adopted by a childless couple and would hang at their house sometimes. They had a house in town they were remodeling, and then they stayed at one of their mom's houses in the country. They decided it would be a good idea to make me think he was a werewolf. One night after dinner in the house that was being remodeled, he went to the upstairs and started a tape with howling, and she shoved me in a dark bathroom with the dog while screaming, "I told you, not while he's here." Like he wasn't supposed to change. I was panicked and crying, trying to find the light switch, and the dog was freaking out, and they stopped and let me out, etc. Some days or weeks go by, and we get out to the farm. They would have me sleep in the house with the mom, and they slept in a pole barn some distance out on the land. They had told me previously that there were prowlers out there sometimes. This particular night, as I was with the woman and we were walking from their living space in the barn to the house to have me go to bed, he came out of nowhere behind me and grabbed me while he was growling, and he had a werewolf mask on while he tried to get me to let her go ask. I was freaking out, and she was yelling that he was getting blood on her and for me to let go. It was absolutely traumatic. I was extremely afraid of the dark for years, slept with a night light well into my 20s, and still don't love being out in the dark by myself outside. Super fucked up. I'm pretty sure that was the last time I saw them. Well, there's a lot of people commenting that are lucky to be here. I was felony stopped north on I-80, but it was 1 a.m. 12:08. They barricaded the road ahead and behind us. Weapons were aimed. We were surrounded by 7 or 8 law enforcement cars. One at a time, we were handcuffed, including the kids. It was an armed robbery and a case of mistaken identity. There was a little excessive force. It was scary because of the weapons. We had a Cocker Spaniel in the car. I was so afraid he'd dart out and someone would shoot. We stood out in the wind with no coats. Something I learned, handcuffs behind your back hurt, especially if you're shivering. It wasn't scary like some of you experienced, but I relived my helplessness to protect my kids. And I relive it when a cop come up with his lights on. Nothing came of it. They searched the car. Turns out they had everything wrong. We weren't in a rusty old model car, and the robber was 5'9", my hubby's 6'2". We drove a year-old Buick LeSabre. It was 45 minutes of wondering what was happening. Nearly choking to death at my work around 10 years ago. I was stupid and never cut my meat small enough. I choked. I tried everything to get it out. Water, coughing, nothing. I couldn't breathe and felt myself starting to lose consciousness. Don't know how, but my body made a giant heave like I was vomiting and it came out. I was terrified. The worst part is that the lunchroom was off to the side and in a spot that is nowhere near where the people work. Most everyone had left to eat out somewhere else. If my body didn't force the meat out, then I probably would have died and no one would have found me till an hour or two later. When I was 17, my dad and siblings went to the store at about 11 p.m. Oh, how I missed 24/7 grocery stores. And I wanted to stay home and play on the computer. It was summertime and we had left the back door open. We had 3 dogs and they would regularly bark at absolutely everything, so they all start barking, but they won't stop. So I get annoyed and get up and see what they're barking at, assuming it'd be a cat or a neighbor pulling into the driveway. It was dark outside, but all the lights in my house were on, so I really couldn't see out the window very well. So I leaned in and put my face up against the window, only to find that I was looking directly at someone else, staring right at me. I panicked and jumped back to a spot that was out of view, and then I froze. I sunk down and listened. I could hear the person pacing back and forth. I texted my dad to come home immediately. I couldn't move. I was panicking about the back door. My dog started acting very protective. One stayed with me, one went over to the back door, and the other kept going back and forth, checking on me, checking on the back door. I'm not sure how long it was until my dad got home, but when he did, I was still in that corner, and the person was gone. I never found out who it was. I never registered what they looked like, but I'm terrible with facial recognition in general. It was January 23rd of 2025 this year. I went outside to my stores outside my freezer to pull some buns for the morning shift. It was me and my new closer. I had just come back from being down with COVID, and we were going through a winter advisory for low cold. As I reached for some buns, the freezer door closed on me, and I was locked in the freezer for about 5 to 7 minutes. Luckily, I had service on my phone, and called my GM who lives down the street from the store. He was here in less than 2 minutes, shorts and shirt in below freezing temperature. I still get chills thinking about it because I feel like in an alternate universe I died in that freezer. One of my best friends is a paranoid schizophrenic. A couple of years ago, I was very sick and bedridden, and I had a gut feeling to call him and ask if he's okay. It was just a weird feeling. I got to contact him. He then messaged me back, saying he was going to kill his mother and then himself. I was too sick to go over to his house to check on them both. I called repeatedly. I then called the police because he went radio silent. He called me back saying, "Me and you are going to move to Mexico, and if I had any spare black bags." I was beyond terrified at this point. The police then called me back, saying everything and everyone was fine. 2 days later, he turned up at my house with a lot of food, saying, "Sorry," and I didn't know how to react. I was so glad everyone was okay, but I was still shaking. I was absolutely terrified. He still struggles to this day, and we are still in contact. When I was about 17, I was driving around my tiny country town with my best friend, smoking a little devil's lettuce, like dumb kids do. We were out on the back roads, not bothering anyone, just cruising and laughing. All of a sudden, a car came flying up behind us and started aggressively chasing us. At first, we thought it was someone messing around, but then they got closer and closer, and it was clear this wasn't a joke. We pulled over to see what the hell their problem was, and this guy jumps out of his car, screaming every swear word in the book, holding something in his hand. To this day, I have no idea what it was, but it didn't look friendly. I slammed on the gas of my old 1994 Ford and pushed it as hard as it would go. Somehow, we got a little distance on him, then whipped onto a random farm road, killed all the lights, and just sat there in the dark. A few seconds later, we watched his car blast past the road we were hiding on. It felt straight out of a cartoon getaway scene. To this day, I still wonder what that guy's intentions were and what the hell he was wielding that night. I work in law enforcement in one of the largest metropolitan areas in the U.S. At the time, I was brand new to my agency's SWAT team, maybe 2 or 3 months in. We would serve a ton of arrest and search warrants, most with night service, and almost all in very bad neighborhoods for subjects of violent or armed criminal histories. Now, guys on the SWAT team always are put on the perimeter, while the more senior guys make entry and clear the house. For this case, it was an arrest warrant for a bad guy with a federal arrest warrant who had violent criminal history and a history of gun possession. Hit the door at 5 a.m. We made our approach and surrounded the house. We knocked and announced. No one came to the door, so we breached with what's called a KBT. The breach failed, and as we were calling up an alternate breacher with a pickup for the security door, we saw the interior door open. We immediately began giving commands to open the door and come out of the house. Through the security door, we could see people running back and forth in and out of the rooms. Eventually, the residents complied and opened the security door and came out. There were 2 men in their 30s, a few older women, and a baby. As they came out, I immediately noticed the subject of the arrest warrant coming out last, carrying a baby wrapped up in his arms. The rest of the team began to clear the house, and my job on perimeter was to assist in detaining the subjects. It was still dark, and I told everyone to face the wall so everyone could be frisked for any weapons. I attempted to start with the subject of the arrest warrant and asked if he wanted to hand off the baby to one of the older women so I could search and cuff him, and he was like, "No, I need to hold the baby." In the back of my head, I thought that was strange, considering all the older women more suitable to hold a baby. Being a new guy, I was like, whatever, and started cuffing and frisking everyone else. Finally, we had everyone except the arrest subject and an older woman cuffed. So I told him to hand off the baby so I could cuff him. He went up to the woman, and I saw him trying to shuffle with the big blanket the baby was in to hand the baby off to the woman all in the dark, and eventually approached me. I told him to face the wall and put his hands behind his back. As I was cuffing him, I heard the distinct sound behind me of solid metal hitting concrete. At that point, I had my rifle slung so I could cuff people, so I unslung it and turned my flashlight on and saw a loaded 1911 .45 caliber pistol with the hammer cocked right next to the older woman holding the baby. We cuffed the older lady and retrieved the weapon. What must have happened was, when we first attempted breaching and they opened the door, all the scrambling around inside must have been the bad guy grabbing his gun, wrapping it in the blanket, and grabbing the baby. When he transferred the baby to the older woman, the gun must have shifted or come loose and fell shortly after he handed off the baby. If him or the older woman had wanted to smoke 3/4 of us in the dark, they definitely could have. We got lucky that morning. That was the first time I remember driving home being like, holy shit, I could have died today. When my best friend and I almost got kidnapped at a crack shack, so we left her house to go to a grocery store. We had to pass this crack house both ways, and going back to her place, a guy made a beeline to us. I thought he was going to ask to bum a smoke, but he immediately opened with, "Has your dad ever told you to go home early?" Us. Yeah, all the time. Well, has a stranger? Guys asking us personal questions like our names, ages, where we go to school, which we lie through our fucking teeth with. I looked over at the house and see 3 men, 2 on the ground and 1 on the roof just staring at us. I don't know if my friend saw them or picked up the vibe, but she also knew something was severely wrong. So she tells the guy, "Oh, sorry, we have to go. Our dad's calling us." And as we calmly run away, I hear the guy say, "Nazi eyes," before going back into the house. For reference, here is hazel green with mine are sky blue.